And welcome back to the start of another weekly vlog. I am so excited to be doing this one with you because I got some very special book mail the other day. It was my Waterstones exclusive edition of The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo, which is what we are going to be reading together for this vlog. I was waiting and waiting for this. I have passed it up at Barnes & Noble, at our other local bookstores, and I knew I had this one coming because my husband is amazing and he pre-ordered it for me as a Christmas gift. Thank you, past husband, for future Lori's happiness. We love him for that. And it arrived just the other day and it is absolutely beautiful. Look at these sprayed edges. Get out of the cover is the same, I believe, but the edges are sprayed and stunning, and I think even the end pages are the same as the US edition, but they are so beautiful. Look at these pomegranates, because I also have a pomegranate tattoo on my arm. I have a thing with pomegranates. I am obsessed with them, and also obsessed with Leigh Bardugo, which you know if this is not your first rodeo with me. Okay, let's just leave it at that. Anyways, what we will be reading for this vlog is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo, and I am so excited to be reading this book. This is a little bit different for her because it is a very historical fiction forward novel with some fantasy mixed in. I say that because I have already started it because, you know, your girl couldn't help herself, and I picked it up and opened it as soon as it came in, and I'm about 50 pages in, so not too far. But so far I'm noticing that the magic that is involved in this book is actually quite subdued, I guess, if that's the right word. I don't know. It's not so much in the forefront. It's just a small part of the story so far. However, I am only 50 pages in, so it could grow from here more than I know or more than I realize at this point in time. And it follows our main character, Lucia, who is a servant girl for this less wealthy household in Spain. So this family that she works for is kind of like on the lower end of the nobility side of things. So even in nobility, there is a hierarchy. There's like the super rich, and then there's like kind of the bottom of the barrel of the rich, if you know what I mean. She works for this family. The mistress that she works for is actually like this horrid woman. She's like awful. You kind of just hate her as soon as you meet her in the book. And she basically just treats our main character, Lucia, like garbage, like the servant that she is, until one day she notices that Lucia has the ability to create magic or make like little, they kind of like call them miracles in the story. So she can make miracles happen, and they're all pretty small, like something as little as the cook burning the bread in the beginning of the story, and she just fixes it really quick because she doesn't want to have to deal with the cook being upset and then the mistress of the house being upset. And that's what draws the attention to her from this mistress. Up until this point in time, she didn't even really know or remember what Lucia's name is. That's how low she is to her. Like, she sleeps in the cellar on a dirt floor with a bag of flour as her pillow. So that's where she's at in this whole wide world of things. But after she discovers that she has this talent or this magic, she decides to use Lucia as kind of like a jester for the family and try to gain popularity among the nobles and get her and her family kind of a little bit higher in the hierarchy of things by having Lucia perform like these little miracles or tricks at dinner parties. So she has decided to use Lucia and her little magic tricks as a way to garner some attention for this family and kind of help them rise throughout the ranks of society. That is basically where I'm at now. Lucia has kept her magic secret up until this point in time because we are talking like the golden age of Spain. This is not a time for women to even have a voice or an opinion, let alone contain magic or be any sort of like witch or witchy person, because they will basically just be drowned or burned at the stake at this point in time. So she has always kept her magical talents top secret. And along with that, she also keeps her family heritage secret as well. Lucia is technically a Jewish person that is living in this time period. And during this time, it is completely unsafe to be a Jewish person in Spain. So her family has basically just dropped their name, created new names for themselves, have hidden their family lineage so that nobody really knows where they came from. To do her magic or to create her miracles, she uses Hebrew words that her aunt has already taught her. She puts these words to like music and tunes, and that's how she creates these miracles and that magic. So now that she's out in the forefront, people know, one, that she does have magical talents, but two, she's trying to also now hide the fact that she uses Hebrew to help her create this magic, and she doesn't want anybody to find that out because then it will be discovered that she is also a Jewish person living in Spain. So far, I really like it. It is a little different because it is a much different story already, but I'm very quickly reminded why I love the Bardugo so much and why I'm so drawn to her writing. There is always something a little dark and kind of gritty to the way she writes. Like, it's a little in your face and a little serious, but also just, you devour it. Like, you just eat it up. The first chapter or two, I was kind of like, oh man, I don't know, this writing style seems a little different. It's kind of like where the character will just go into their own inner monologue and kind of be thinking something to themselves and come back to the point in time and the conversation at hand, which can be a little jarring when you haven't been reading a narrative or a prose like that. But once you sink into it, you definitely just kind of pick up and keep reading. I do like Lucia so far as a main character. She's definitely, even though she's always had to hide multiple aspects of who she is, she's still a very strong character, almost to the point where she's going to get herself in trouble because she's kind of got a very sharp tongue and she does not need to be talking to people in a certain way with the station that she is at in life. She is also a little bit more educated than people realize because, again, at this point in time, a woman with an education, being able to read and write, is not even really that acceptable, let alone having magical powers. So she is much more brilliant than people even realize, but you get to see from her point of view how she actually thinks and how she actually works. I am very excited to see where this book goes. I am hoping to finish this whole book with you guys during this vlog. So that's what we are going to be reading this week. And I'm going to take you along with me. I'm going to sit down and read a little bit more this afternoon and then also chip away at this book as much as I can through this upcoming week. But with that being said, I will check in with you guys as soon as I have another update. I hope you had a fabulous weekend and I'm so excited to take on this week with you guys. And I will check in with you guys later. All right, bye. Friends, we have to have a check-in. We have to have a chat about The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. Why do we have to have a check-in? Oh, because I haven't been able to put this book down since we last spoke, and I finished this morning on page 262. This is a 350-page book, so I have less than 100 pages left already. I cannot devour this fast enough. So that alone should let you know how I am feeling about this novel. If you have read any of Leigh Bardugo's adult novels, you will already have a taste in your mouth for how she writes and what her writing style is like, and it is very similar in here, so keep that in mind. So if you were not a big fan of Ninth House or Hellbent, don't know if this is going to be your cup of tea, but if you were, like me, where those books were basically your entire personality, you are going to love this on a level that you don't even realize yet. And let me explain a little bit. So the last time we talked, I was mentioning that we were introduced to our main character, Lucia, who is a servant for this lesser nobility household, and she is treated like garbage, basically. But her mistress of the house discovers one day that she is able to perform like little miracles or little acts of magic. And then she was eventually caught by her mistress by doing one of these little tasks around the house. So she has been discovered on the magic forefront, and it has brought the attention to not just some of the nobles in the area, because now her mistress has made her perform basically like a jester at her little dinner parties to try to increase their standing in the social hierarchy. She has garnered the attention of a wealthy patron who knows that the former secretary of the king is putting on this competition or like this tournament to try and find a blessed person to basically work at the side of the king, to work for the throne, to help the king further his reign and the overall wealth of Spain. So Lucia is propositioned by this patron to go to the house of this former secretary, because this former secretary is also trying to get back in the good graces of the king. And in doing this tournament and helping him find someone who can help him, basically a magical person that can help him, he is hoping to become the secretary to the king again. So there's like this big circle of people wanting to get richer, people wanting to better where their position is in the social climate, and basically using people like Lucia to get them there. So now she's really worried. She's basically freaking out because there's these two very pertinent things about her that she has always tried to keep hidden. One of them is now out on the table. And now she has been studying under the servant to this wealthy patron who is going to take her to perform at the secretary's mansion. And she is starting to notice some very odd things about him too. Like, he's just not your average servant. He's not your average man. And the relationship he has with his master is much different as well. And he's also just very knowledgeable on things such as magic. And he is basically trying to train Lucia to go to this tournament and win so that everybody in this situation can be moved up in the world. I will say, I did not realize that the book was going to have such heavy undertones of racism and religion all rolled into one, but I don't mind it at all. I actually feel like this was such a brilliant way for an author to discuss some very heavy topics. And I know that it's been done in the past, but I'm just very specifically saying in this instance. So Leigh Bardugo has taken this main character who is discriminated against because of her religion and her heritage, and also discriminated against because she is of a magical being. And in this world, even the magic is surrounded by religion. So basically, a vicar or someone from the church will determine whether or not your magic is God blessed. So like they say, Lucia performs miracles. She doesn't do magic, she performs miracles. Or if your magic is of the devil, and basically some guy in a church somewhere is going to determine whether or not you are a witch or you are blessed by God, and therefore you can bless the people of Spain. Basically everything is kind of wrapped into like this political, religious, like racist package, but also at the same time, magic is at the forefront of this, which makes it a perfect vehicle for some reason to be able to discuss these topics. And if you have read any of those adult novels by Leigh, so you know like the writing style in Ninth House, it's all very very raw, very gritty. And that's the only way I can describe it. Like, there's a few instances in the book of some not so pleasant things happening, and it made me like cringe a little bit because the writing is just, it's, like I said, it's gritty. It's dark almost. And she has this way of like slapping you in the face with her words, but in a way that you get addicted to. That's the only way I can describe it. I am so obsessed with the entire setting of this book, the atmosphere behind it. I mean, we're talking Golden Age Spain, people of nobility, people that work as servants, and magic being being part of this whole story is just something I didn't even know I was missing. So this historical setting just adds to like another atmospheric level in a fantasy that I am just completely devouring. Like, I've read historical fantasy before, but this just feels even different. Like, literally take Ninth House, so Yale University, so of like urban setting now, but like transfer yourself back into this age of Spain where people have to get their gowns made and they travel by carriage. That's like that's where we're at in this world. I am obsessed with it. I love it. And Lucia is just this, oh man, she is this woman that has a confidence to her that she almost, you wouldn't think she would contain because of where she comes from, because she has always hidden who she is, because she works as a servant for this god-awful woman. But she has a smart tongue, like she has a serpent tongue. She will snap back at you. She will put you in your place. And with this character who is training her for the tournament, he is very, very black and white. There's no gray area with him. Like, he says it like it is, but she is not scared to push back on him, to question him, to like wonder what is going to happen like with her through this tournament. What is everybody's major goal out of this whole thing? Like, she is very quick to ask the questions and push back, even though she doesn't necessarily have the right to do so. Like, as in like in this world, she does not have the right to act the way that she acts. And it is very like, it is, oh, it's just awesome. I love her so much. And this whole book is just full of people that she can't trust. Literally has zero trust. She can't trust anybody, from the family that she worked for, from this wealthy patron that is paying for her to attend this tournament, to her own aunt who is involved in the situation as well, because she has her own life and she's hiding who she is because she comes from the same place that Lucia does. It's all just very diabolical and very dark and heavy and gritty. And also, again, like this whole sense of magic being a way to discuss some of these major topics in a book is something that I just am eating up so much. So I only have about, I want to say about 100 pages left, because it might not be 250. Oh, I think it's a little longer than that. So I have a little more than 100 pages left. And I'm trying to make this kind of non-spoilery because it is such a new book. Like, this is a new release. I don't want to give too much away. I just kind of want to give you my thoughts and opinions on the writing and the story. I'm obsessed. I love seeing magic in this sense. And again, the magic being kind of so heavily involved with religion. Like, when Lucia does perform things, people are like basically wanting to fall at her feet and being like, God has blessed you, so you serve God and I serve you, this type of thing. And it's, I don't know, I love it. I'm obsessed. There's also a little bit more developing with Lucia and this man that she has been training with. And not even necessarily romantically. I just mean she has finally spent time with someone who watches her, who looks at her, pays attention to her, who pushes her and challenges her. And she is really smart. She has spent her whole life hiding the fact that she can speak multiple languages, and she is educated in Hebrew and Latin, and she can do these fantastical things. And she finally has someone looking at her in her life, and I don't think she has ever really felt seen before. There's just so much. There's so much to the story, and it's delectable, and I am here for it. I cannot wait to see how this book ends. I'm just trying to press upon the point that this is fucking fantastic, and can confirm 100% obsessed with Leigh Bardugo forever and always. Love you always. Thank you for blessing me with everything that you do. But with that being said, I want to go ahead and wrap up here. I'm going to try to chip away at this more today and then tomorrow. And I don't think it'll take me too long to finish this book at the rate I'm going. But with that being said, we will do a check-in when I have another update. I will try not to get through the entire book without checking in again. But if that does happen, I guess you know, like, I can't put this book down. That's where I'm at. Oh my gosh. So yeah, until then, I'm going to finish this coffee, do a little more work. We're heading to the gym here in a little bit. And then hopefully this afternoon, if it's quiet, I'll get some reading done, chip away a little bit more, and then we will do a check-in when I have another update. All right. I hope you guys have had a fabulous day, and I will check in with you later. All right. Bye. Hey, let's have coffee and a chat about our little book and where we are now at, which is finished. I have finished The Familiar by Miss Leigh Bardugo, and I wanted to have a chat with you guys about it. Give you my final thoughts and feelings on this book. It was superb. It was superb. I rated it 4.5 stars. It was not, okay. I hate saying stuff like this because I don't want it to come off the wrong way. But when I say like it was not my favorite book by her, that doesn't mean that it wasn't a good book. This was still like a 4.5 star read for me, but her other books are legitimately like 5, 6, 7 star reads for me. I think this just took me a little bit to get into because of the type of book it is. So that historical fantasy setting did take me just a moment to fall into, but once I did, I was in it. I was sucked in. I loved the setting so much. It was a beautifully gothic atmosphere. The main character working for this family of lesser nobility was a really interesting dynamic because they still had like this house with a cook and a servant, which was Lucia, our main character, but they didn't have the means that other families had. So they still had like this home that was described very beautifully, but it was still not like, they weren't like living in a castle, like in a palace house. But it sounded so beautiful, like the description of it and like the surroundings of the home, like the courtyard in between the homes where they lived. So I just really enjoyed that. And she mentioned the weather and the time of year a couple of times. Like it was like a beautiful fall day, and it really just made me think like this would be a perfect fall read if you like a gothic atmospheric book in the fall for like a spooky season vibe. This would be absolutely perfect for that. There was something just dark. It had like that dark tone to it through the entire thing. You know, when you read something and it has almost like that veil over it, like a sepia colored, as you are reading, like you can see everything in that veil. That's what it felt like to me. The plot itself I thought was really, really cool. I liked the idea that there was this real world but also magic. So we're talking about a king that wants, the king of Spain, that wants so much power that no one could go against him. And to do that, his former secretary is holding this tournament to find the best magically blessed people that can like bring the king to a level that no one can touch him, basically. So you had kind of, even though it's like historical, I don't want to say like urban, but you had almost like that blend of the real world and magic at the same time. And I thought that it was so brilliant that everything was just interwoven together. Like this book had so many layers to it. So not only was there this magical atmosphere or like this magical plot, it was so intertwined with racism. So our main character was already like, she would have been discriminated against because of her Jewish heritage. So she kept that secret the entire time. There was just religious persecution because of that. So anybody that wasn't following the religion of the crown was persecuted. Like you had to give up whatever religion you were, and you had to follow what the crown was doing. You had to be baptized, you had to go to mass, you had to follow the guidelines depending on whether you were a man or a woman in within the religious setting of Spain at the time. And it was also very heavy on the standing of men and women during this time period too. So the sexism was very heavy throughout. Again, there was, I had mentioned in some of the check-ins, like they're talking about women in this time period that can't even leave the home without some form of a male chaperone. And there's stories of women that have fallen to their deaths because they were leaning so far out the window just to get a peek at the world. And it was very heavy. Like there was very heavy tones of things, but the magic at the forefront of it kind of made it easier to absorb. And I know, and I've said this in the previous check-in, I know that this is not a new thing. I know that a lot of the writers that we read, especially like fantasy writers, are brilliant people. And the undertones of their books are talking about something bigger and more important than we realize most of the time, or like it maybe takes us a minute to realize that they are using their books and their stories as a vehicle to talk about certain things. I get that this is not some new remarkable thing that Leigh Bardugo is doing herself, but it was very heavy on all of those topics. So I think, whereas before I've read a lot of books where you could kind of see that the author was using the characters and the plot, the magical plot, to kind of discuss some topics. This was just like in your face. And that's also the reason I love Leigh Bardugo so much. Her writing, her prose is so gritty and dark, and like her words will slap you sometimes. Some of the descriptions of things were kind of hard for me to swallow, but also like makes it, again, it gives it that real feeling because of the time that we're in, right? So we're talking about people being persecuted for their sex and their religion, and some of the things that happen to people that are like undertaken by the Spanish Inquisition. It's not pretty. It's very graphic and it's very dark and very heavy. But again, we're taking part of our history. We're taking history and blending it with this magical setting that made it kind of like, damn, like I see what is happening to these people and I can't believe this was a real thing. But also I am so into this story because this is also a genre that I enjoy reading. So again, I'm becoming a broken record, but I appreciated the fact that I read a book I knew I was going to like because of the fantasy setting, and it helped me kind of better understand moments throughout history. And I appreciated that. And I know that an author that has a family history herself of being, being Jewish and maybe coming from a Hispanic descent is like, how amazing that you can kind of do the research and know what you're like, the stuff she's talking about throughout this whole book, is heavily thought about and heavily researched. Like I had to look up terms about trials that they were going through and the way that the Spanish Inquisition worked at the time. And it also just made me like a better, like a smarter person, I guess, if I can say that. Like at the end of the book, I felt like I truly knew more about history, and I love that. I don't know. I could go on and on about it. The only reason it wasn't a 5-star read for me is really just that kind of moment in time where it was taking me a minute to fall into. And I think also that had something to do with the multiple POV setting. And I don't know if I've mentioned that previously in a check-in, but it is multiple POV. And oddly enough, in the beginning of the book, because it did switch quite frequently, so we're getting everybody in the story, you are getting moments in time from their point of view, which seems overwhelming in the beginning. I think that's what it was. But as the story went on, it almost felt so seamless to me that I did, like, you could just pick up and read and you just knew like you were reading from someone's point of view. And I really appreciated that too. There was something that she was doing there that made it seem fluid. Like I could just, again, pick up the book and I was reading from Lucia's point of view, or I was reading from her mistress's point of view, or the mistress's husband, or the other servant, the magician that was training her. And it just all kind of worked in the end. And I really, really liked that. So I just want to press some of the tropes that really stood out to me in the book. And again, the prose of Leigh Bardugo really comes through. So if you have read her previous works and you know you like them, I really think that you're going to like this one too. Again, it's a historical setting, which is new for her. So that is very prominent in the book. Like you are in a different time. So if you don't love historical stuff, but you know you love fantasy and you know you like Leigh Bardugo, I would still give this one a try because you never know. Maybe it's a good way for you to dip your toe into a more historical fiction or historical fantasy type setting and see if that's something you would like down the road. But I loved this so much. I really can't stop thinking about it. The tones of the book were also just so heavily romantic. It was everything I wanted. It was dark, it was gritty, it was gothic, and it was romantic, and I loved it. I ate it up. It was delicious. Delicious is such a good word to describe this, because if we're talking about delicious, let's talk about this beautiful inside cover. These pomegranates, again, I'm obsessed with pomegranates. I have a pomegranate tattoo, but you will start to learn a little bit more about that in the book as well. And the description of some things in here, like the food and the drinks and the relationships. Romantic, delicious. I don't know if I can say it anymore, but there it is. I absolutely loved it. I am so happy that I read it. I would even maybe do a reread of this in the fall time because of that setting. I think that would be really enjoyable. But yeah, I want to thank you guys again so much for joining me on this weekly vlog. Per usual, it is so fun to have you along this journey with me. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button because it always helps a girl out. And if you want to make sure you don't miss any of my other upcoming videos, like my monthly wrap-ups or my TBR videos or these vlogs that I release on a weekly basis, go ahead and hit that subscribe button too. And have you read this book yet? Or are you a fan of Leigh Bardugo in general? Let me know your thoughts and opinions on either this book or any of the works that she's done and what you think about her as a writer. I'd love to know. Let's start something in the comments. Let's start a conversation with each other. That's what we're here for. As always, it has been an absolute blast, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.